All right, everybody, welcome back to the Raiders Report here. Today we're joined by a very special guest. He was born right here in Ottawa, played for the 67s back in the day before heading out east to play for the St. Marie Huskies, where he earned himself a Rookie of the Year award in his first season of three spent there. He even went on to spend a season in the British Hockey League with the Medway Bears in 94-95. His accolades do not stop there. He coached the Pembroke Lumber Kings U18 and won the league championship as head coach. He's now the head coach in the Nepean Raiders U18 team and doing a wonderful job. Jarrett DeFazio, thank you so much for joining me today, and it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited. Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun for me too. Obviously, another lockdown here in Ontario. What are you doing to keep busy?
That's a good question. It's difficult. We were fortunate, our Nepean Raiders team, that we were practicing and we were playing one game slash kind of scrimmage a week
Right.
against a bubble team, Kempville. And so we were in the fall able to, practice a couple times a week and play that game every Saturday against Kempville. And the players were just, enjoying it. And, it wasn't a regular season by any stretch of the imagination, but, we were engaged, we were excited. And it's always great when you're a hockey player or a coach, no matter, just getting to the rink. And, those are some of the great memories, having fun and laughing and joking. And then, of course, getting to work on the ice and working on the development and wanting to get better. So, right now, communicate with the team, just through email, and we actually are going to start a online practice once a week.
Oh boy.
uh, yeah, so we're going to start doing practices again. It's online, and we've got some various topics. We're going to do some drill review, we're going to show some video clips, we're going to have some special guests. We're going to talk different things, nutrition, workouts, different things like that. So we'll talk about in-game sequence type things, and we'll talk about, how you can stay ready for when hopefully we can return to some form of play this season. Like, that's
Yeah.
still the hope, that we can at minimum get back to that sort of bubble format and
Right.
continue on.
Fingers
Yeah.
crossed for sure.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
really interesting though that you guys are doing a sort of online. That's really interesting. And so is it mostly theory then, and just kind of getting
Yeah, well, really the idea came from one of the other coaches and even a parent,
oh,
and we were kind of forming that idea. I was kind of formatting that idea as we continued along in the lockdown. Like, at first didn't know if it was going to end that January sort of
right.
26th. And so, not really planning anything yet because we hope to get back on. But when they extended it to February 11th, and who knows how much they
Yeah.
extend it further, we kind of shifted, pivoted, being that operative word these days. We pivoted to some other ideas, and one of our friends knows somebody on the GG's varsity hockey team, and they were doing online practices, and sort of the
Oh,
idea just sort of came organically from that, from a various few things. That,
okay.
okay, well, let's get back once a week together and make it online, and let's make it exciting, and keep developing any way we can.
Yeah, that's good that you guys are getting something out because it's hard in this environment, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um I'll just start with how you got to coaching with the Raiders. How did you get with the organization?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I guess the previous 2 seasons I had been with Pembroke, and Randy Watt, the general manager of the Junior A and the U18 team at the time, was looking for a new U18 coach. And I had ironically just stepped down from Pembroke. I had done it for 2 years, and it was a lot of travel. I live in the city, and so I had just sort of finished up with Pembroke, and so the timing was just right.
Okay.
A lot of times they say the right place, the right time, and at that time they had a coach that was doing dual roles, doing the U18 and the Junior A. So that coach was going to flip to just doing Junior A, and they had an opening for the U18, and I had just thanked Pembroke for everything and just couldn't do the travel anymore.
Right.
And they were
Understandable.
thinking, yeah, and so it just was kind of right place, right time. Met with Randy, had an interview, and 2 seasons in there now with the PN.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um what are some benefits of the U18 Raider system that you've noticed?
Well, I really, really enjoy sort of, the development family per se. It really has sort of that U18, and then it can branch off into different ways, but it's still sort of within that development family in the sense that, the player next step would be junior B with West Ottawa. It could be junior A with the Nepean Raiders. It can be another year with the U18. And in some cases, it could be a player just heading right into the Ontario Hockey League.
Mm,
So you really feel part of sort of a family development focus with U18, and that's been kind of its goal for the last few years, is just focusing in on that and really developing the player, from that young age, from that midget level or U18 level now,
mhm.
it's called, across the board, right up through to junior A.
Okay, yeah,
So
interesting.
that kind of, it's just to add to that. It kind of to exemplify it. You're looking at some practices where you can practice with be affiliated with the junior A or the junior B or both
Mhm.
of the programs, and you can get to some extra practices. And sometimes you can get in some games. We had some players last year from our team play in games for the junior A club, and that's just great development.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. I have a question about just the challenges and the development. So at U18 at that level, what are obviously you've been coaching at the U18 level for a few seasons. So what are the biggest development challenges that you've noticed in players at that stage?
That it's a really interesting level, in the sense that for a lot of the first year midgets, it is their draft year for the OHL.
Hmm.
So that in itself presents a little bit of a challenge in some of the pressures that
Mm,
accompany that, on a young player. They really feel the sense of, scouts watching. They really feel, it's pressure.
right.
So it's balancing, helping the young player through that, and just, having them go out and play hockey and do all of the things that they've been doing all of these
Right.
years growing up, and not getting caught up too much on any of the periphery stuff that's happening on the outside. And I think the second thing that is becomes apparent at the U18 level is, as you're moving through in hockey, you're working on developing all facets of your game to develop all of those. But in U18, your next level, it's your last minor hockey years. There is no more minor hockey
Hmm.
after what used to be called midget. Your next level is junior, and so when you're developing the player for junior, it becomes a little bit more selective in terms of what skill set have they brought to the table at this level, that you're not going to necessarily alter too much. You want to build on the strength of what they are as a hockey player. So whereas back in Pee Wee, or at the U12 whatever level, you might have been doing power play, penalty kill, a regular shift, all of those things. But at U18, you've kind of defined now. You're sort of, while you may never not do a power play, you may have now shown or articulated a strength that you're a strong forechecker,
Right.
and you're a penalty killer type person that doesn't necessarily score a lot of goals, but you're tough on pucks, tough to play against. And we have to hone that skill, because junior's going to be asking for that when you try out. What do you specifically bring to the table for this team when I am formulating and picking a team? And so we have
Mm,
to polish that. And we also have to teach and articulate that you can't be everything and everything
right.
anymore. So there's a balancing there, with that at that level, both from the player and even from the parent perspective sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting that you just need to identify the skill and hone in on that skill. And it's a job for you and also for the player to realize that, well, this is the skill that I have and I need to work on this, and it's not an all around thing anymore.
Yeah, it's, and it's not, when we do power play, for example, in practice, every line gets to go through it. If we formulate power play units, we do make sure that everyone does go through, and in case they're called upon to do it or we have injuries, but we might have a power play number one unit that's going to get a few more looks at it and a few more developments at it. But we make sure that every player has a role, and that they're in that role and they're developing in that role. So it could be on the PK side, it could be on the power play side, and that's no different for the defense and any other type of sort of specialty situations that we're working on.
Hmm. Interesting. I have a question about your time with Pembroke. Obviously, that's sort of a winning experience. What did you learn from that experience as a coach?
Well, one of the things that I really learned is the first year that I was there, we were ninth out of 12 teams.
Okay,
It was
bit of a
a
battle.
young, yeah, it was a battle every night. We had some really good players on that team, and it was a we were very close to actually being sort of fourth through ninth and 10th. It was very tight. And so I learned a lot of things personally from that year, in terms of what the league looked like and how you had to prepare each and every night. And I learned how to get better. And when we came back the next year, that group of second year players, we had familiarity with each other, and the rookies that were coming in, we're a strong group. The veterans we had coming back were a strong group. We had a player, Tyson Tomasini, coming back. He was a strong player. And of course, we had Mason McTavish coming in as a
Right.
rookie who scored 30 goals with the Peterborough Petes as a 16-year-old this past season. So he was
My
one of those
goodness.
first round pick right into the Ontario Hockey League. So we had a really strong group. But yeah, that is sort of the cycle of the U18 league. It's sort of 15 and 16-year-olds. So there is it depends on kind of what year. Sometimes you're in a rebuild, sometimes you're in a stronger, sometimes it's just the way the age groups overlap. You're in the mix all of the time, depending on who you have. And Nepean, was a little bit different when it came to Nepean. We had a pretty strong team. We did have a lot of young people, but also some strong players coming back, and so we were fifth last season, right in the top five. So,
Hmm.
and of course the season was cut short in the
Right.
playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to.
Robbed.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
I have a question about your history coaching, maybe, and maybe your influences. Was there a coach that you played for that impacted your decision to coach, or that maybe stood out to you and really made you choose to get into coaching?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was fortunate to have a lot of role models as coaches growing up. My
Okay.
first coach ever for first number of years was a police officer, Rob Kerr, and then after that for a number of years was a firefighter, Larry
Oh
LaRock.
wow.
So I really had great role models kind of growing up in terms of the minor hockey coaches, and two people that I often think of and remember how much fun it was, and how much they developed us as young people, not only in hockey but as in life. And that's one key that I've sort of taken out of all of the coaches that I've had. And then it transcends into junior. Of course, I played for Brian Kilray,
Oh,
in the Hockey Hall of Fame, of course, as
right.
a coach. And so you take bits and pieces from all of those people. And Brian Kilray, for example, probably this is going to be an interesting statement for me, because it's opposite of what people would think. But some of the greatest things that I've taken from him is some of his off ice teachings as opposed to the on ice.
Oh, okay.
When we would go to a restaurant on the road, he made us all stand up at the end and go into the kitchen and shake the cook's hand and the manager's hand and thank them for the meal. And I never
That's
forgot
awesome.
that. Yeah, I never forgot that. It's a pretty valuable lesson at 16 years old,
Wow. Yeah.
of community and to be appreciative. And I've taken those teachings with me coaching to this day, and I often talk about life skills to the players. because, at the end of the day, hockey is a vehicle for so many things. It's a sport, and a lot of people want to go on and play professional hockey, but you need to be a complete person in order to do that. And schooling is important. How you treat people is important. And I like to take those teachings of all those people along the way. And yeah, and of course, some of their great on ice teaching. Had a great university coach, Norm McCauley. Teaching a lot of the preparation side of things, and some junior A great coaches, Doug LaValle, Roy Green, and in pro, little bits and pieces from all of it.
The list goes on.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's an awesome answer. It's that's great that you took those lessons, and from what I hear, you're doing a phenomenal job too. So, that's
Well,
awesome.
thank you.
I'll get into your playing career a little bit if you don't mind. So you mentioned playing for the 67s. You had quite a good run there. How different was the game back then to now?
The game back then was a lot more wide open.
Okay.
It was a lot of run and gun, a lot of offense. Even the defense were part of the offense. A lot of run and gun, higher scores. We're talking as in the late 80s, into the early 90s, and
Right.
very tough, very physical, a
Right.
lot of physical, still a lot of fighting at that time, in junior hockey
Right.
and whatnot. But it was definitely sort of a wide open type of hockey, and you move the puck. There was a lot more passing, I think back then of moving the puck compared to now. But now the kids are so skilled,
Right.
they're very, very skilled, very fast, very strong, in better shape, better condition, than sort of back then. So it's very different. It
Yeah.
really is. It really is a lot different. I would say it's less physical now than it was back then, and probably because you can't catch the people quite as much. I mean, they're so fast. I mean, when I'm in practice, coaching or whatnot, sometimes I'm just amazed of how fast the players are nowadays.
Yeah, that's the direction the game is going towards.
Yeah,
People talk about speed and skill and not so much the strength still, but it's, the physicality isn't as big as it used to be.
yeah, no, it's about using your body and positioning yourself certain ways and taking away certain angles and whatnot, and you kind of have to with that type of speed out on the ice. You
Right.
have to be able to, in defense now. I think back to the defense back then, they were really big guys, strong guys. But for the most part, I don't think they skated, a lot the way, as a majority, is sort of the
Hmm.
way that some of the bigger defensemen skate now. As a collective, like the big guys can really skate and really pivot now.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So obviously after the 67s, you headed out east to Halifax. How was that experience playing there?
Yeah, that was, I was never drafted, so I came close to being drafted. So I really thought that getting my university education and playing varsity hockey was kind of like the minor leagues myself. That I would take that route, get my degree, play a good level of hockey, and then sort of come back around to pro hockey after, when I had the degree in my pocket. And you know and that did occur. It didn't occur at the level that I thought I could come back out at, but you can never
Right.
take away the degree from the back pocket. And it had great years at St. Mary's University.
Hmm.
That those years, the Atlantic University League was very, very strong.
Oh, okay.
I would say that our division was very much like sort of what you would call, well, not what they do call today, like the East Coast Hockey League. Like that division was very strong. So maybe not the depth of, four lines and eight defensemen and two goalies of an East Coast Hockey League team, but certainly two and a half lines, four or five defensemen, a goalie. It was that good. It was that good. It was
Right.
one of the, and they call it the best kept secret, Canadian university hockey. And unfortunately, I think they still call that all these years later. Although I see more and more recognition for the talent of all of these ex-junior hockey players. Some are just continually getting better. Like, they need to continue to scout these leagues, because somebody who may not be ready at 19, 20, maybe they're just not strong enough, could be ready at 21. It's just, a
Right.
late bloomer to some degree. So
Mhm.
so yeah, I really loved that experience, and then did go play pro, sort of on the back end, and I had naive visions that I could come back around to sort of NHL or American Hockey League, but when you're 3-4 years later, you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. But just the same, I had a chance to go play in England, and really enjoyed that experience, and had a chance to go play in the Detroit Red Wings organization for a brief time with their farm team, and enjoyed that. So
Yeah, I'll get into I wanted to I wanted to ask about your time across the pond. How was that experience? Like that's so interesting to me, players who go overseas, because it's a different game, right? It's got to be so much more. It's just a different game overseas, and I was wondering what your experience and your thoughts on that were.
yeah, it really is. You have to produce points, at least back then, and I don't think that's changed quite a bit. You've got to produce.
Hmm.
If you're an import, if you're one of the two spots as an import player, you've got to produce, or you're gone. And but in terms of in England, of course, soccer is everything,
Right.
and we really had sort of a junior hockey kind of crowd. When you compare it to, the NHL stadiums, here in Canada for hockey were what they have for soccer,
Right.
and then some. And then the junior hockey size crowds, 3,000, whatnot. That's what their hockey sort of crowds were like. So, we'd
Yeah,
get
that's not bad.
2,500. Yeah, we would get, a good little junior hockey size crowd,
Yeah.
2,500 to 3,500, passionate, just loved the sport. And I think, Great Britain, now that program's really come a long way in the last 20 some years. And,
Oh, really?
and I think they're in the second division now in terms of, for the World Junior Championships, for example. You
Right.
don't see them in the tournament that we just had, but they're in a tournament that's one level below,
Right.
with a group of countries. So they've come a long way, in terms of. So I always characterize the uh, the game like when the imports were on, which usually was a group of Canadians or Europeans or whatnot. You had a pro level kind of game, and then the British hockey players that were on your team, if you were able to get some of the better British hockey players, you had a chance of winning the championship.
Hmm.
Because when you made a line change, and it might be British players versus British players, if you could have a better group on yours, that was the difference maker to sort of between winning and losing.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah,
It
very
was fun
interesting.
though.
I
It was
always
fun.
find it's sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it was fun. It was a great experience, And a funny story. I remember one place we went to play, and the puck went over. The puck was an offside,
Right.
and as soon as the offside occurred, the British announcer was explaining why there was a whistle to the entire. So instead of music coming on, I'd be saying, "Oh, and the reason the puck, why there's a whistle." And I was looking around, just everyone was kind of nodding their head,
Oh.
like learning. Oh, okay, that's why the whistle went. That's quite funny, I was just like, okay, wow, I'm in a different place now.
Yeah,
So,
that's so cool. That's so
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
it's funny.
I have a last question for you. And I like to ask this for pretty much everyone that comes on. So, um, a lot of players, a lot of guys wish they could go back and give themselves some life lessons. If you could go back to your start of your pro career, what piece of advice, or your coaching career, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Well, one of the things that I often think about, if I go back to that time, is training. Training in terms of identifying, what you need to do to help you be a better player on the ice. And if I look back on my career, I was never a fast skater. I wasn't a fast skater at all. I could score goals, but I wasn't a fast skater. And in the off season, I was lifting dumbbells and bench press and arm curls like crazy to get stronger, but I was actually making myself slower
Slower, right?
because I was bulking up, and I was 200 pounds, but what I needed to be was, maybe 190 and a lot stronger and more core strength, through the legs and whatnot to get myself a half step quicker, as opposed to bulking up, and bulking up only made me slower. So I guess my question, and I tell a lot of youth this, is away from you want to be a hockey player, you need to train, and train your body so that you can get so strong in your core and that you can get yourself quicker and stronger, get your legs as strong as possible, and do the right things that you need to do to prepare yourself for, and that's so different, preparing yourself for the junior level, or and then preparing yourself for the next level, and that's what's going to separate you a little bit from one player to the next. If you really are committed to being a hockey player, and I don't mean it's necessarily a full year-round thing, because I always believe that other sports are important, like playing lacrosse or soccer or
Mhm.
whatnot, but use those sports to leverage your training and help you grow in that area. So I'm a big believer of training and preparedness, and I look back on my own career and how I wasn't quite educated enough to kind of know, and that training was just kind of coming around at that time. It was just from a hockey perspective, but it was a bit behind other sports. And now there's so many great people out there, personal trainers and nutritionists and whatnot. And I think you really do need to take advantage of that, understand your body, and understand how you can get yourself better to help you on the ice.
Well, thank you so much, Jared. I really appreciate you coming on and getting your insight on just the squad, the U18 squad, and also your playing career was awesome. So, thank you so much. Good luck. Hopefully, a season is around the corner. Fingers crossed.
I hope so. Yeah, I
Um,
really do for the players and the families,
yeah,
and thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
no problem. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.